Chapter 1. A Cold World.
Frozen plague, bringer of death and woe, creator of legend.
Gretsen Spirit Bone, 4975. Folnos, 4995. Gretsen nursed Talon to health, using all of her vast resources. She had been one of the tribe's most skilled healers and mystics for decades. The chiefs themselves sought her many talents. She spoke with spirits, conversed with nature, and read the stars and bones alike. The tribes respected and feared her gifts. Therefore Talon was not killed the night of his birth. To be a barbarian of Folnos one needed to be hard and strong. They did not tolerate weakness, nor was anyone coddled. Being a Folnos barbarian meant that one worked hard, fought hard, and had no soft side. The northern cold demanded such an attitude. Anyone who grew weak on the unforgivingly frigid island would die. Talon slowly grew stronger, and when everyone thought he would die in a day, he lived a week. When everyone thought he would die in a week, he lived a month, and then another. And when 1 year had passed, his fellow tribespeople all said he wouldn't live 2 winters. By the time Talon turned 5 years old, people finally stopped predicting his imminent death, and began threatening to kill him instead. He remained in the care of Amma Gretsen, and though she was strict and severe in her punishment, she cared for the boy as she had for her daughter. She taught him everything he needed to learn and all the skills he would need for survival. Though Gretsen tried to teach him the craft of her trade, the spirits did not speak to Talon. Nature remained silent, and the stars told him no secrets. She did not share his disappointment, however, and assured him it was because he was destined to become a mighty warrior. This only convinced him further that she was crazy. He knew of his mother's death and his father's abandonment. Amma Gretsen held back nothing from Talon. He happened upon Krial every now and again around the village, but his father never looked at him and never even acknowledged his existence. Talon had been born many months premature, and though he remained relatively healthy, he grew small for his age. From his birth he had been short, weak, and too skinny, and he never caught up to children his age. He was teased daily, with only his grandmother and few others calling him by his name. Instead, others called him Runt, or Plague-born. Some even preemptively called him Scum, Drugar, and Throwback. Almost daily the other children punched, tripped, kicked, shoved, bumped, and beat up on him. The beatings were never broken up by the adults, and other children never came to his defense. He had learned early on that fighting back was useless. The one time he had tried, his tormentors nearly killed him. By the time Talon turned 13 years old, he stood only to his peers' chests, having not even put on half the mass of the smallest of the other children. His Amma told him to quit expecting to grow, and to make do with what the gods had given him. But Talon could not give up hope that one day he would awaken 8 feet tall and muscled, and beat down every last one of the bullies who had made his life miserable. As he got older, the differences between himself and every other barbarian became more obvious. At times he hated himself for being the runt. He hated his father for abandoning him, and he hated his Amma for saving him. His early years were hard. Had it not been for Chief, Talon may have turned out quite different. On his 15th birthday, his Amma gave him a timber wolf pup she had found in the forest to the east of the village. The pup's mother had been killed by hunters, and though its brothers and sisters had been taken to be used as sled wolves, the pup had not. Gretsen had barely stopped a hunter's killing hand, and taken the pup as her own. It was the runt of the litter, and was no good as a future sled wolf. Gretsen found it fitting that Talon should raise the runt, and when she presented the pup to him, the boy had smiled for the first time in a season. He named the pup Chief, and they became fast friends. His Amma refused to feed Chief, and so Talon was forced to hunt for food with him. The wolf pup went everywhere with him, be it hunting, lessons, exploring, or to market. The two were inseparable. Chief became a light in Talon's dark world, and warmth through the cold. Having a wolf also gave Talon a bit of a reprieve from the daily beatings. Talon had dreaded his 15th birthday because he was 1 year closer to 16, when he would become a man and stand for Miotvider. All barbarians stood for measure at the age of 16. If by then their heads did not reach the Miotvider stick, they were cast away to live the life of a scum. Scum, sometimes called druger and throwbacks, had been the barbarian slave class for centuries, ever since the barbarians' banishment from Agora. The scum were shunned at birth for their deformities, size, or sickness, and sent to live with the other throwbacks far away from the villages. They were not permitted to marry or have children upon pain of death, nor could they ever use their family names. The dominant Vald never called a scum by name, unless it was one of a derogatory nature. In the days before the barbarians were cast from northern Agora by the hated Agorans and Caedren dwarves, the scum would have been cast over a sacred cliff to be judged by the barbarian god of strength, Steiker. If their spirits were deemed worthy, they would be born again into a stronger body. When the barbarians were driven from Agora to the frozen island of Pholnos, their numbers had been dangerously thinned, and they began to allow the scum to live. Many of the scum females were sold to the Agoran slavers, along with the larger of the men. Otherwise they lived a life of servitude to the Valt, and their masters were far from kind. Many of the scum they worked to death by the age of 30. Talon's father had insisted he be cast away at birth, knowing that he would never grow to be a Valt. But Gretsen insisted that he live as a Valt until the day of his Miotvider. Talon learned this at an early age, and to his disappointment it became clearer every year that he would never grow to be the size of a Valt. The measure for men of age 16 was 8 feet tall. He had only 1 year to grow over 2 feet, and he knew as well as everyone else that he would not. The older he got, and the more apparent it became, the more the taunting and teasing increased. Talon often went out with Chief late at night, and snuck to the western outskirts of Scrum village. The village was located far from the Valt, and much of it was built on barren, rocky land. The Scum walked to the Vald villages every day to tend the crops, though they could grow no crops of their own. At night most of them returned home hungry. Talon had been sneaking out and watching them since he was 10 years old. He was surprised to discover that they acted so lively around one another, almost normal. In the Valt villages the scum walked with eyes always on the ground, and a slight hunch to their backs, as if they expected to be throttled any moment for everything they did. And rightly so. A Valt could beat or kill any scum they wanted with no repercussions. But in Scum village Talon found a cheerful, quick-to-smile people, who told stories around the fires, and sang strange songs full of harmony, unlike the Vald's grisly voices and sharp pronunciations. Softness of voice and song was not received well in the Valt villages, but here melody filled the nights and rose up into the heavens with the glowing ashes of many fires. The scum were not permitted to get married, or have children, but what Talon saw of their villages was closer to family than he had ever seen. One night, a few weeks after his 15th birthday, Talon sat huddled low, watching Scrum village as he often did. "Maybe being a throwback won't be so bad," he said. Chief looked at him the way curious puppies do.